the original airdrops that we sent ended up being pretty life-changing for a lot of different developers, right?
Do you think Bonk saved Solana?
Bonk is the most used token outside of Sol and USDC on Solana.
Hi guys, and welcome to What's the Meta. I'm your host, Ryan S. Gladwin, and I'm here with Nom, a core contributor for Solana meme coin Bonk. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Ryan. I'm excited to be here.
Bonk is one of the biggest meme coins in the world, and the largest on Solana at the time of recording, at least. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, it sort of spawned from the wreckage of FTX. As a bit of a background here, Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of FTX, was a vocal supporter of Solana. So when FTX exploded in such a public way, Solana took a bit of a hit. And as a way to heal the network, a token was deployed, and that was Bonk. Nom, you're a way better person to take this story on than me. So could you tell me a little bit about those early days of Bonk? Why was it created, and how does it relate to what happened with FTX?
One of the fun things that always comes out of conferences is a ton of people focus on organizing their product releases and a bunch of their bullish announcements and everything. So you sandwich all of those into the time when everybody's getting together and you get to do keynotes and product demos. And Breakpoint 2022 was full of that. You had a bunch of different teams coming out with DeFi updates. You had Google announcing that they were going to be running validators and all these different things. And on the final day of Breakpoint, you have the news kind of break about FTX collapsing, right? So you have all these people who just put in all this work, got to the end of the year, ready to go, organizing their fundraising, everything around it, and then boom, like bottom falls out of the crypto ecosystem. And this isn't something that was unique to Solana, but what you really saw was a bunch of different teams immediately lost access to their treasury. One of the requirements from raising from FTX Ventures or Alameda, at the time was usually to keep some portion of your funds on FTX as a platform, right? They were supposed to be the ones safeguarding your money for you, which turns out that they were trading it on your behalf, which is only now funny in hindsight, and at the time sucked. The other side of this is, the market making on chain, right? The activities that were powering a lot of the DeFi infrastructures and the ecosystems, pretty much everybody pulled back, right? There was a lot of fear, there was a lot of concern. You had various, issues that had already happened inside of the ecosystem or what happened in the following months. This is stuff around, replacing Serum with OpenBook, organizing, the updates between, like Maridane's MSOL program when they had a DPEG incident. There was a community-based liquidation of a Sol and a whale that was in a short position, right? Like there was a ton of different DeFi things that got in, and the general activity was for people to really become risk off. And once you get into those areas where nobody's really willing to trade, a bunch of the teams that had raised money and were getting ready to deploy programs no longer can. And the support inside the ecosystem, was still there on a community front and from a foundational front, but there's not really the vibrancy that you want to see, right? This is a bad time, and I think everybody's confident to do that. Myself and a number of other contributors had been coming up with various different ideas for what can we do, right? We were all heavily invested in the Solana ecosystem. We've been around for a few years, and we all wanted to see it succeed, right? It's something where we want to take a shot on what can we do in order to help out and improve not only a lot of like the on-chain metrics, but also just the general vibe of everything that was going on. So we came up with a lot of the ideas that turned into Bonk over the course of about a 1 month period after the FTX collapse. And that turned into organizing a massive airdrop, competing at a time where there was really no, other media pressure. Most people don't focus on product releases at the end of the year because everybody's busy with their family. You have a bunch of DJs who had just lost, a bunch of money that were sitting at home, wanting to see something that could be successful. And a lot of things really came into alignment where, the day that we launched on Christmas 2022, you had various people who were focusing on leaving the chain, and then you had a bunch of people who were focused on supporting and promoting the chain. And then Bonk took off from there because we gave people what was essentially a zero cost gas token or airdrop that they were able to use to try out all of the really cool shit that a bunch of people had spent a year building, but wasn't getting the attention that it probably deserved just because of the overhang of a lot of negative catalysts that had happened. So we were lucky that we got to build on a lot of what was really strong inside of the Solana ecosystem from a developer and a community front, and then move into how does Bonk support all of those users, all of those artists, all those developers, and get them to continue to enjoy the ecosystem for as long as physically possible.
Yeah, it was a dark time in crypto's history. And as you said, looking back, it's kind of funny. Like, it's preposterous that FTX were even able to do that with uh, investor funds. But yeah, it was a dark time, right? But how does a community token then slowly help rebuild Solana? Because from the outside looking in, I wasn't super exposed to Solana at the time, but I was in the scene. It did feel like Bonk was like sort of a vibe shift a little bit. It sort of was bringing fun back to Solana.
Yeah, and that was a lot of the tagline that we really wanted to touch on was, there's a lot that can be said for existing social groups or NFT communities or various different, like positive media choices, right, that were being made to try to keep the vibes around Solana, right? Like the ideas of Solana Summer and when everybody was, consistently like trying out new products and all these different things that had come from 2021 was still alive. And thanks to a lot of the work that had gone on for both in-person and online events, you had relatively tight-knit groups of communities that were all looking for reasons to band together, even if they weren't necessarily part of the same collections or the same sort of tribes. Everybody still felt like they were a part of Solana. So what we did for Bonk was, one, thanks to how the token was received by the market, how things went over the course of its first, 2 weeks of lifespan, the original airdrops that we sent ended up being pretty life-changing for a lot of different developers, right? So they chose to, be thankful for Bonk in a variety of different ways, not only for, utilizing inside of their products, but also, getting it as something where they really want to start using Bonk almost as like a test token in a lot of different areas. And you've seen that continue on, not only in 2023 and 2024, but now there's nearly 500 different integrations on chain. Bonk is the most used token outside of Sol and USDC on Solana in terms of program activations. It's cheap, it's everywhere, and it's something that is fun, right? And that's one of the guide goals. But we also made sure that we were continuously engaging with the artist community and the developer groups, whether that's through hackathons or whether that's just through like one-off supporting of various different projects where people just had ideas. They needed some sort of support. They needed some sort of way to get over the cold start problem of not having enough funds or users in order to really amplify, the efforts of what they're actually building. And we use Bonk as essentially a marketing engine and a funding engine through the efforts of the Bonk DAO of basically just saying like, we will help and support, all these different ideas because, crypto is a high risk environment, right? It's not only a startup environment where 90% of these will fail just over the course of a couple of years because it's just the statistics of new businesses. But you're now bringing people into like this heavily financialized world where now people have to worry about, very rapid iteration cycles and a bunch of different changes. So that failure rate continues to go up. And you can either be scared of that in terms of, oh, I don't know if this business is going to work out, or I don't know if this project is going to work out. Or you can look to see, like, even when things don't go perfectly, even when, new startups don't become $1 million businesses or don't hit whatever their metrics or their goals are, you can still make those into positive marketing events. You can still make it into showcasing new technology or new improvements and primitives that they're getting built up with. And we always make it where Bonk is, if you're trying something new, we want you to include the token. And if you figure out later on that, you can build out a better economic model through some other change in fee structures or things of that nature, like, sure, great. But all these things get to start with Bonk and ideally get to work with us on promoting it and getting it in front of a bunch of people who got a bunch of this token for free just because they were good actors inside of the ecosystem and they're looking for areas to spend it or use it as much as possible. And that flywheel has been something where a ton of people have been putting in work, for the last 2 years, every single day, of just talk to teams inside of the industry and see what we can do to support as many of them as we can and make sure that we're helping them hit their goals.
So for a token that has been used to propel Solana forward after such a dark period in its history, and was airdropped to good actors, like you mentioned, to help them sort of push that forward, Why did you choose Bonk as the meme? For those who don't know, Bonk refers to sort of a internet edit of a Shiba Inu getting bonked on the head with a bat in sort of a Looney Tunes style, not in like an animal abuse way. Why did you choose that meme?
Yeah, one of it is always like I think it was just one of the more popular memes that we're using inside of a group chat of like some of it is around friends having Shibas as their own dog. Some of it is just around the idea of it being fun to say. It means a lot of things in a lot of different languages. It has a lot of different connotations. It's relatively versatile. But we just saw it as something where we knew that people love dog coins, right? That's a very easy statement to see. There was some previous animation or artwork that we had been looking at in terms of ideas around using previous test tokens or things like that in order to work on like I think we had a video streaming and tipping platform where we were trying to figure out like what the easiest way to make like crypto tipping natively integrate with a bunch of different platforms was going to work. That's just a bunch of like small scale side projects that all coalesced into this right thing. And I think Bonk just as a meme, I think is something where it just continuously makes people smile. As something where we can build a very strong brand underneath that without necessarily having to come up with something entirely new, or even to co-opt the original meme, which I think is usually like going to horny jail or something of that nature, right?
When you launched that token, did you expect it to be as successful as it became? I mean, at one point you touched $4 billion market cap. That's a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, I think we had a plan in terms of what we wanted it to do in the immediate future, and then we had a plan of like, how does this go long term for a 3-year or 5-year sort of plan, and that all kind of went out the window with how successful it was right off the start of things. We had to drastically change, how we were looking at it, what supporting teams and infrastructure was looking like, all these different things. We launched this token just because we wanted to give people some happiness and some fun. And, we got ridiculed and laughed at the time for launching a token on Solana. To be realistic, there were plenty of people who were just like, I don't understand why you would do that. And, now it's easy to look back and say that we were right. But I think we honestly just wanted to see something be successful on the chain. And we wanted to do something that we thought would bring a lot of people in. And we spent a lot of time developing out structures or ideas and things that we thought would work, whether it was with existing teams or new infrastructure that we wanted to build over the course of the next few years. Some of that came to fruition, some of it didn't. But the one thing that I think we're very proud has stayed the same is really just the whole goal of the token was to support an ecosystem of developers and artists who were making cool stuff that we thought had a chance of reaching like large mainstream user adoption. And some of that has come to fruition, and some of those are still being worked on. But I think Solana in general has done a really good job of being the retail user chain that we wanted it to be, and that we saw, that we could support.
You're absolutely right. For me in 2024, Solana was the ecosystem to pay attention to in crypto. It was exciting every day to log on and see what was going on in Solana. But at that point when it felt so dark, how did you see that in Solana? What projects were you looking at that you were like, wow, this is why we want to save Solana? Why not just like hop over to Ethereum or Cardano or something?
So I spent a variety of time across a few other chains before I came to Solana in 2021. Some of it is, sunk cost, right? Like I'm happy to say, like I'd spent a lot of time in various different NFT communities, various different art communities. Here on Sol, it's where my friends were, it's where my strong relationships were, it's where I was invested, right? I had my own goal in trying to make sure that the chain did well, rather than going into something where it would just kind of like fall off into obscurity over time. And I think we didn't really see, you had at that time in 2022, a lot of people were talking about how good Polygon's BD was, right? That they were landing all these different deals, that there was, all the success that was coming out of the marketing spend that they were doing in all these areas. And that didn't really amount to anything, but we didn't see the same kind of like focus on technical upgrades or improvements or new feature sets that were coming out from any of these other chains, right? You're seeing the Ethereum L2 starting to launch, and a lot of the problems I think you're seeing now continue, like they were forming and being talked about, but they probably weren't as widespread previously. And a lot of the other alt chains, like the other alternative layer ones, had also been running into various different problems, right? Like you had seen a pretty big demise of BNB in terms of on-chain activity, which you can attribute a lot of that to a bear market in terms of just what was going on. But you hadn't really seen any of these other networks take off, and you didn't really see excitement or interest in any of those other areas. So one part is sunk cost and being involved in something day to day. You want to see it succeed. And one part of it was we didn't really see that there was a better option. I still don't really think there is a better option. There's new L1s that are coming out that are promising to be relatively high performing. There's new areas where people are investing and spending a bunch of different time. There's always a focus on omni-chain and this idea of chain abstraction to where the underlying tech doesn't necessarily matter. It's the applications on top. But I mean, I think in 2025, the numbers are speaking for themselves, where significant, not only AI and deep in infrastructure, but also like financial infra is just continuously happening on Sol. That's where the development, that's where the users are coming and spending their time to. And even though you have other chains performing really well on various different metrics, like the users are on Solana, the people are on Solana, and that's where I think money, applications, and time will continue to flow.
I understand if you don't want to toot your own horn on this next question, but do you think Bonk saved Solana?
I think that's something where I'm always happy to hear it when other people say it. It's not it's something I say myself. I think Bonk took advantage of the time that it was in as a way where it could help out with Solana's like revival and rebirth. And these things, like all of these things for Bonk wouldn't have gone well if there wasn't a significant amount of effort by a ton of different teams across the area. What I think we did really, really well was take an ecosystem that at the time, CT and venture capitalists and a bunch of different groups had all written off as dead. And that nothing was ever going to happen there again. That was going to be, a dead chain because of everything that had happened with FTX. And I think the financial catalyst and the performance of Bonk as a token made a lot of people wake up. So even though, you have things like the Metallic tweet that happened roughly around the same time, that I also give a lot of credit to it for changing a lot of the EVM minds around it. I think you had a number of VCs and groups that were banging the drum on why Solana was, as a token was a good buy, as an ecosystem was a good place to deploy. I think all of those were good. I think we did a very good job of change the retail narrative and the way that people were looking at Solana as a like, oh, there is still things happening here, or there are consumer apps, or there are various different things that people can get excited about. So I guess in summary, I'm happy when people say it. It gives me hope. I think we helped. I think we did a good job of improving a few key metrics, and I think we did a good job of getting people excited. But I don't think we can take full credit for saving Solana. I think that's a very large team effort. I'm just glad that Bonk was there and Bonk was helping out with that.
Yeah, it feels like you guys sort of bought the bottom. Everyone had lost hope in Solana, and you guys launched like at the bottom of Solana and helped lift it up a little bit. Since then, Solana has changed so much. Solana is now like sort of considered like one of the big three, like pretty unanimously at this point. What are the sort of major changes you've noticed on the chain since then, especially on the side of meme coins, because that's exploded?
Yeah, you used to have this idea where tokens needed to launch on ETH in order to really have a chance of success, right? Because of this idea of like sunk cost and big money and whales who, had the opportunity to invest in these things and cause financial future. A lot of people get into crypto purely because of speculation. And people weren't looking at Solana at the time because they didn't think there had been enough of a wealth generation event. If you were on EVM, DeFi Summer did a really good job of funding what would eventually go into like the NFT art and meme coin space for Ethereum in terms of like getting people started with large bankrolls. Obviously, the ICO craze, the previous cycle, and everything else did a good job too. But Solana hadn't really had that like pure retail accumulation moment, I think, in terms of wealth, where people thought that it was going to be able to support all these different launches. I think that's definitely changed. Jupiter, Gino, Bonk, and there are a number of other airdrops. I'm not trying to exclude anybody. There's been a large number of wide-scale airdrops across the ecosystem that have rewarded people who are using applications or who are doing things. And the natural effect is that some people sold those airdrops into Sol or in other areas, and now they have a lot more money to try things out with, right? And now you have the opportunity to increase TVL significantly, even if I think that still is a flawed metric. It is a metric that people are using for success. And you have the opportunity to like rapidly accelerate how a lot of people are engaging with financial protocols. And once you start seeing people make money on the chain, more devs, more teams, more groups start to transition into that chain, and it accelerates because they see that there is more and more opportunity. I think a lot of people go into the trading bot meta now, where the idea was that Solana didn't need trading bots until Bot showed up, right? Because they didn't think that there was enough financial opportunity or incentive in there. There wasn't enough tokens launching, and there wasn't enough, opportunities for like a Unibot or any of these other areas to like really succeed on Solana. And then Bonk took off and did a massive amount of volume and proved people wrong as Solana went through Breakpoint 2023 and really got to see another like massive adoption cycle, not only in terms of on-chain users post Breakpoint, but also in terms of like token prices going up, right? Which are a marketing effect, and they are something that you do need to look at, where especially on the more retail side, like people want to go where they think the money is flowing, and green candles are one of the greatest marketing opportunities that you will be able to have if you are targeting retail users or VC inflows. The chain's activity, I think, has changed a lot. You've obviously seen Jito as a protocol that's working through everything that's needed to solve the MEV problem on both sides of the equation, right? In terms of being able to help out with solving, and in terms of being able to protect users who don't necessarily want to do it. Now you're seeing the overreactions to MEV problems, where now you're seeing like dark pools start to get launched on Solana. You're starting to see more privacy protocols and private transactions getting ready to start up again. And these are great. These are solving problems at scale that previously people didn't think were economically viable or needed to be solved on Sol. And that's continuing to change. And then you have probably the biggest thing that a lot of people look at in terms of the financialization of content. Pump.fun did a lot of different things. And I think one of the hilarious things that it did was it actually started being a quicker way for people to get news based on like headlines happening, right? Because there would be tickers that show up, and that would usually happen before someone was able to get a report out or anything around there. There's people who are going to argue that those platforms are good, bad, or anything else, but what they do is drive economic value into the chain, and they drive time that people are spending on the chain. And that gets really, really exciting, because outside of crypto, every other software company in the world that's developing applications usually focuses on time that they can get users to spend in the app and how much they can get people to come back to it on a daily basis, because that's the way they either push advertising revenue or in-application spending or any of these things, right? People want as much of your time as they can get a hold on, and they want to make sure that you're using their applications, because then you're not using their competitors. And in crypto, we focus a lot more on the financial aspects in terms of like how much money people are spending or what they're doing, on a day-to-day basis, in terms of like number of transactions, not necessarily like time spent inside of the app. I think what Solana has done a really good job of, and what they're going to be continuing to do a good job of, is getting more and more of people's time being spent on chain rather than on off-chain activities. As you get better money transmitting applications like Sphere, or as you get better, financial setups, either it's the groups of like what Decaf or Zarpay or Cast or any of these like financial products that are getting set up, a person needs to spend less time on a traditional banking application, right, and more time on chain. And as they see that it becomes easier to spend money in crypto than it becomes to spend money in the real world, because traditional banking applications lag by about 15 years to technical updates. There's a reason why if you have a credit card right now, there's still a signature there's a signature panel on the back of your credit card. That has nothing to do with how you use Google Pay or Apple Pay or any of these different things, or Tap Pay, right? It's obsolete, but it's still something that needs to happen because of previous financial infrastructure that got set up. Crypto can rapidly iterate and improve on that a lot faster, and just make it easy. One of the best things that crypto does is, enable people to send money trustlessly and easily across the world. And if you can get more people to be like, oh, that's exciting. Now I spend 5 minutes less a day inside of my banking application. Then maybe they also figure out, like, oh, what else can I start doing? Or maybe I start doing some investing on chain rather than off chain. Or maybe I start moving more of my time on there. And once I start investing on chain, maybe they figure out that there's a social app that they like, or maybe they figure out that there's a game that they like. And then they spend more time on chain, and they spend more money on chain. They spend more time paying fees, which is good for all the validators. And then we can build out that data set and make it easier to continue to scale Sol around the world, right? Like, that's, in my opinion, the thing that needs to happen in order to change crypto from like financial speculation into significant use cases. And all of these, consumer use cases are really where I think Bonk can thrive and help bring people to them, because we need to take a lot of shots on goal with consumer apps in order to have something really blow up and really get people excited. And until you have something that is like the thing that you need to go on chain to try and utilize, you're probably not going to be able to compete with the massive marketing budgets and advertising that off-chain applications have, right? Or the massive like entrenched like media force that people are trying to get you to spend on current gaming applications, things of that nature, right?
Yeah. To take you back a bit, for me,
sorry, that's going way too far off into a tangent.
It's all good. Show me the future of crypto, man. But yeah, to go back a bit, for me, Pump.fun is one of the most interesting things I've maybe ever seen, to be honest. And yeah, it must have been really interesting as someone who's it has been so in Solana from the beginning to watch that happen. And yeah, like you mentioned, the whole news element. I wrote a story when the first Trump assassination happened. Pump.fun actually identified the shooter before the FBI did. And stuff like that. It's like absolutely crazy. How are degens doing it? But also it spawned tons and tons of memes. Some of the biggest memes of last year came from Pump.fun. But also tons and tons and tons of degeneracy and the whole live streaming amount of people setting themselves on fire and pretending to kill themselves. And it did go a little bit too far. But sort of, what is your opinion on Pump.fun and that degeneracy that comes with it? Because I know some people are sort of ashamed of the image it gives Solana. I've seen some people online say that, oh, Solana's not a serious chain because look what is happening on the Pump.fun trenches. Is that a concern for you at all?
Well, I think that's starting with a loaded question, right? But I'll try to give it a little balanced take. Crypto, for a lot of its history, has been very good at being a 24/7 online casino, for lack of a better terminology, right? There's a lot of people who come into the space because they see it as quick money. They see it as opportunities to, evade regulations or move money around or do various different things. And a lot of people come in here because it is gambling, right? And Pump does a lot of things well. And one of those is enable people to speculate on attention and opportunities, which crypto in general is very good at getting people to talk about one thing for a certain period of time. They're able to capitalize on news cycles and all these different things. And you see, memes that pop up on message boards, chat rooms, various channels, your mom's Facebook group, right? Like, wherever it is, there is always going to be some sort of memetic attention around current events that are going on in the world. What Pump did is make a very easy channel for people to speculate on the popularity of those sorts of things, right? Moodang is a great example where previously you probably would have seen Pygmy Hippo, right, on TikTok or YouTube or something, right? Like, the average person in crypto would have seen an image of that and laughed at Tiny Hippo, and that would have been the difference in those sorts of things. And now there's been a mentality shift whenever people are seeing news headlines with these opportunities or things going on, where I think those now become a lot more of like, immediately, I need to bet on this, or I need to see whether or not this is popular. I need to share it with certain people, or I need to see if there's somebody else who's already made a ticker of these sorts of things. And I think that's like fed into a lot of the dopamine or the gambling, addictions that a lot of people in crypto have, where people like, the way that they get to participate in these sort of things. People like the opportunities to, try to feel like they're in something early, or they look at this as like, oh, I get to be a part of like the next Doge or something that's going to become this massive, financial opportunity or worldwide speculation. And like Doge started off as a joke, right? And now it is the name of a future government department. Like,
Yeah.
and there's a pretty direct correlation between that. If people view Solana necessarily as not serious because of Pump, I think they're looking at crypto probably the wrong way, or they're looking for reasons why their chain or their technology is superior, which we all do for logic, right? Sol is also not innocent of this, where we think that our technology is the best technology and their technology is terrible, and our people are, benevolent founders and theirs are cruel dictators, and right, like there's always going to be a narrative way where you can spin any of this stuff going well. I mean, the live stream meta and a bunch of those things were bad, and I'm glad it's over. There has been a lot of metas that have happened, not only on Solana, on a variety of different chains. As Pump did well on Sol, it spun off, or not Pump itself, but derivatives got created on all of these different chains of what they were supposed to be, right? Some of them happened on Sol, some of them happened elsewhere, where people wanted access to these platforms because they saw it as an opportunity to continue to make money, because the casino is always open, and there's always going to be news headlines, and especially in today's world, you're always going to be fed something new that's trying to keep your attention, because people are again trying to fight for attention, because that's how they sell advertising revenue, and that's how they get you to spend money.
I absolutely agree. Pump.fun has done that. Pump.fun has been the place for people to speculate on current events and what cultural movements and what's going on. And you said it was a loaded question, but I personally am a huge fan of Pump. Obviously, I think it did go too far at certain points, but they removed the live streaming feature. But I think in many ways it sort of revealed the true colors of what crypto's been behind a lot of this. A lot of this, we've got to admit, people get into crypto to make money. So when people are trying to make money, they eventually get pushed to the weirdest extremes. And I don't think that's a reflection on Solana. I think maybe that's more of a reflection on crypto as a whole, rather than Solana itself. I want to get us back to Bonk, because we veered off a little bit there. You're actually a world record holder, from what I understand. You walked the most amount of dogs or something like that. Why did you do that, and how does that relate to Bonk?
So, as we talk about marketing and attention, all these different things, so there's a number of different ways that you can get people to like talk about tokens or do things. And one of the things we want to do is not like spend money for marketing stunts for the sake of doing that, right? We want to do something to bring attention to Bonk, and the drone shows or the various different things that we've done for Bonk that have been to grab attention have done a really good job. So the Guinness World Record was based on talking with local teams in Korea, talking about a lot of the work that's being done right now on ending the global dog meat trade. So we worked with a local group called KK9R that does a lot of like dog rescues from various places where the animals are being mistreated, and works on rehabilitating them and getting them into good homes. And we wanted to bring attention to that, because I think that's an important cause, and it's something that I love the animals, and I work on a dog clinic, right? Like, let's do something that helps dogs, not only the token. And this world record got thrown around as an idea where, I think I said yes to it because it was fun and it sounded fun, and then I got to actually go work at the shelter for a week, get to meet all the animals, get to meet their handlers, work on planning for this, and it turned into something that was like a very strong emotional moment, and turned into something where I was really proud of getting to do it. So we ended up not only raising a bunch of money for the charities that we're working on saving these animals. We got to put Bonk, officially in the record books. We got to obviously get news headlines and coverage and get people talking about it. And yeah, every dog that I walked was a rescue from, somewhere where they were abandoned or mistreated. And now I think we're at 14 of them have been adopted officially so far.
Nice.
And as the rest of the animals continue to get healthier and continue to get to the point where they are ready to be adopted, right, and they've been re-socialized, we're looking forward to all of them getting to be adopted and changing the stigma around rescues, right? There's a lot of people who want designer animals or things that, if people want to pay for purebred, not shaming them in any different way, but there are animals that need help, right? And there's dogs that need people to choose to adopt them. And this changes the narrative where it's not like, oh, a rescue animal that had a hard life. It's like, dog's a world champion. Like, this is no longer about do you want the dogs? Like, are you good enough to take care of a world champion? That was part of the conversation I wanted to have and change. It was a good way to get a headline that I think was about crypto doing good in front of a lot of people's eyes around the world, and that was the biggest focus of it. There's too many times where people talk about crypto in news headlines, and it's purely just about like either somebody scams or goes to jail for stealing a lot of money, or there's the headlines of 2017 of everybody's getting hilariously rich and you're not, or any of these other things that go on. Like, we're inside of the space and we're all going to be competing for attention with every other company and every other product in the world. Let's figure out how we not only bring people into crypto, but let's figure out how we do things really well. And that's why we've been working on a charity that we call Bonk that works directly with the Giving Block and a number of groups around the world, where it's a very easy pipeline of crypto money into charitable dollars. That's easy. It's a lot more understandable. It's a lot simpler to do like reporting and transparency and where the funding is going. And we're trying to make it so that as we continue to financialize a lot more activity and a lot more behavior on chain, part of that is we also want to enable trustless charitable giving to be something that people put together. And so in 2025 or 2026, when people are worrying about paying their taxes, right, ideally they're getting charitable receipts from groups like Bonk or the Giving Block, where this is something that they just start to integrate in paying taxes and everything else that they have to do around the world, right? Like, let's get it to the point where this becomes so socially normal that you don't even think about the fact that you're donating dollars on chain, right? You just think of the fact that you're donating.
How many dogs was it?
So we ended up doing 38. We did training with 40, but 2 of the dogs we didn't think were in good enough health conditions the day of. It was summer in Korea, it was blistering hot, so we just decided to end up doing it with 38 overall.
Yeah, what is the logistics of that? How do you carry the lead?
So you're not allowed to do any kind of harness or straps or anything that would make it easier. That would ruin the world record. So I had 2 carabiners, one in each hand, and they each had 19 dogs on them. So that was it. That was as much as I got. The trainers and everybody, had set up a course. We had organized everything to make sure that we were hitting the required area, which was a little bit over a kilometer. We had people outside just in case any of the dogs were able to slip a harness. These are animals that are great at escaping if they need to. So we wanted to make sure that they were all healthy and happy, taken care of. But we were expecting to have to do a number of attempts in order to go through with it. But no, we walked up the course. The officials were there. We're happy with how everything went. And yeah, it was a 15-minute dog walk that I do not think I will be forgetting anytime soon.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a wholesome story. As a project, Bonk has done a lot of in-person activities. Like, I've seen you've hosted a rave inside a London church. You hosted a Miss Korea event. Sold some art at an auction. Why do you think it's important for meme coins to have these in-person events?
When all of these relationships are online and digital, it becomes easier to fade out of them, for lack of a better word, right? Like, there's always going to be people who don't participate as much as they can, or feel like they don't necessarily like have a tribe or have a group. You see this with a lot of the office workplace culture, right? Of like whether people are working from home or whether they're working in person. A lot of those bonds get stretched when people are all working from home, and it becomes easier to lose a lot of the closeness. There's been a number of studies in areas that are around this to just that just people are looking at it just like it's better in person. But it's the biggest way. And I think one of Solana's really strong things that kept it going through the bear market was the work that was done on hacker houses and the in-person conferences and getting people out continuously to see product development and releases and building out those social bonds, right? There's a bunch of people who I met purely in crypto who went from animal avatars online to people I've met in person and now really good friends and people I spend time with every single day. And I think having experiences that people want to be a part of, whether it's a rave in a church, whether it's things like the beauty contest that we were working on in Korea, stuff like that, is really good talking points, really good media points, going back to that attention economy area. but it's also a good way to unite a bunch of people who talk to each other a little bit online and bring the social network together. And you're continuing to see now protocols that are doing, their own conferences, right? Like Jupiter's doing a Istanbul conference at the end of January in Istanbul, right? And it's just purely going to be the Jupiter community and a bunch of their partners coming together. We've talked about what a Bonk conference would look like or things, and whether that's something that needs to be attached to Breakpoint or needs to be its own separate thing. You're going to continue to see a lot of these like in-person activations, I think, show up more and more just because of how you want to bring people together, how you want a lot of these, and especially as crypto becomes less stigmatized, people are going to be coming together and wanting to meet up with the people that they've, made friends with along the way. And especially as you get to the point where applications are being more and more involved in the physical world, which, Stepan, I think, did a really good job with early on. Then you've got, things like Helium and the various deep-in products that are, bringing crypto into people's day-to-day. With stuff like Moonwalk, which is, getting people to like go out and be social and active. Once people start using crypto applications more and more, then it becomes easier for people to start talking about it on a daily basis because it's no longer just degenerately gambling online with friends, right? It's something that you're using and you get to talk about this being a positive area. I think Solana's in-person activations were a great reason to build out Bonk's in-person activations. And now I think there's a lot more teams that are going to be following suit with that and bring people together.
There's a lot of communities that do these in-person activities. I've seen Milady do a lot of that kind of stuff. They do. They've hosted a bunch of raves in London as well, actually. And it's really interesting to see these communities sort of form, and especially Milady, it feels like everyone's dressed the same and it's like the same kind of vibe. I'll be interested to, next time you host a rave in London, I'll have to come.
I will keep you in mind. I don't think we'll do a church again, but we'll do something to keep people excited.
Awesome. It's been lovely speaking to you. I've got one more question before you go. Why do you think meme coins are important, especially on Solana?
So I think memes do something really well, which is, I don't think people look at this as much, but they test the edge cases that people usually miss, especially in software development and things of that nature. So there's a whole bunch of different things that you can talk about on the cultural level and the way that they bring people together and the ideas of like shared speculation and obviously like the amount of time that people spend talking about things or tweeting about things, etc. Right? Like, they get people talking, they get people interested and excited, they get people financially motivated and involved inside of the chain. But like stuff for Bonk, like we had a coin that went this large with a massive number of leading zeros that just broke most of the protocols on Solana. Our Orca pools didn't work because of the number of leading zeros. A bunch of the oracles didn't end up working. Drift is using, a 1,000 Bonk contract because Bonk is too small in order for their like pricing oracles to work effectively. And there's been nothing but stories of just like, hey, there's a lot of leading zeros in your token. It makes it hard for a protocol to do work. Or we, overloaded a variety of different RPCs or networks or issues and showcase that was very hard to airdrop to 50,000 people just because of things that were going on, right? Like they're very good at getting people to talk and try shit out, and they're very good at showcasing what traditional developers or individuals aren't focusing on for the use case of their technology. So they're good at figuring out what you don't know. And I would say that's always been one of Bonk's strengths is we love breaking shit. When stuff isn't working correctly. I think memes aren't going to go away. I think they're going to continue to be areas where people speculate on, and also as ways that you could bring communities together, bring people in. They're going to be areas where people continue to try to build ideas around, right? Like now you have this idea where like DeFi AI agents are sort of these like combined groups where they are launching meme coins, but they're technically like DeFi tokens or things of that nature, and there's weird fluidity, I think, in terms of like a lot of the definitions on there. I think memes will just continue to infiltrate more and more into the more traditional parts of the crypto or financial ecosystem rather than go away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me, mate.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you.